Hey everybody, I'm Nandy from Gardin.
And I'm Matt, also from Gardin.
And this is Joe from Venezia Farms, and today we're going to be talking about worm castings. So Joe, let's jump right into it. What are we looking at and how do you make these?
Well, we're looking at a diverse vermicast made with compost, mushroom block substrate, and a host of other inputs locally sourced.
So why did you start? You said you've been doing this for 4 years commercially, professionally.
Since 21.
What made you want to do this? Why,
Saw a need for a local option for people to use vermicast or worm castings in their gardens, in their grows, without shipping it in across the country. We're doing it by reducing waste and reducing compost and manures in our communities, and just filling that gap.
Absolutely, yeah. Joe started reaching out to us a while back, and it's so exciting to have a local producer of worm castings, because anyone who's been messing with worm castings for a bit knows they're not all created equally. He actually just harvested these for us, so they're super fresh. Most of the stuff, it's great. It's been sitting but if it's been sitting in a bag, it loses a lot of the microbiology to it, and on top of it, having it locally sourced is incredible.
So that's a really good point. So why is freshness, why is this bucket of worm castings that were scooped this morning different than a bag of worm castings that you might buy at a gardening store?
We should take a peek under a microscope after this. We can get some of the other ones. Take some
That's a great
samples and
idea.
Look at them.
Yeah.
But the life in here, worm, to me, you should speak more about this, but worm composting, worms are really like the excavators. There's so many different other microorganisms in there that play a critical role that you're introducing. There's little insects that are being eaten by predatory bugs, which you're now introducing into your into your grow, which is amazing, because a bag that's been sitting there doesn't have that. So, but I want to hear you tell us what's.
Yeah, it's the microbes, it's the life, the living soil. That's why you're buying worm castings, is for that beneficial bacteria, fungi, and all those other little critters that are running around, continually doing that work for you after you put it into your garden, or after you put it into your whatever you're growing. And you'll just see the benefits continue on, and you'll have to add less going forward and just keep things happy longer.
So you mentioned that you use mushroom blocks as the primary food source for your worms. Did I hear that right?
Not primary, but a good amount of them. You want to be very cautious about how much you give them, because it is it's a wood source or a bran source, or there's different pieces, but everything in moderation. So you want to listen to the worms, you want to listen to your outputs on the microscope, what you're seeing, and dial it, whichever way you need to. So you want to find that nice balance. But we, having a place to bring those blocks, they're great, and they sit for a while, and they sit in a bin, and they fruit typically while they're waiting. But typically I just break them in half, and I actually let the worms come up and top feed. And while they've gone through all their other food, it gives them that buffer to eat and to live while I'm waiting for the next feeding, and they come up and they kind of chow down from the bottom of the block, and that gives them what they want for when they want it. Yeah.
So when you say their next feeding, what else are you feeding them besides the mushroom blocks?
So we have switched gears to a bokashi food source. We aren't doing a traditional compost from a manure anymore. We are doing primarily a bokashi ferment and wood chips, the mushroom blocks, biochar, a bunch of different inputs.
Yeah, talk about sustainability. You're talking about we're not sourcing it, having it shipped to us from far away. He brought this to us. He lives right the towns over, and on top of it, now you're using local waste products and converting them into fertilizer. So much of the fertilizer that people use, even the organic stuff is coming from other ends of the world, things like that, guano, you're destroying, wildlife ecosystems and whatnot. So, this is a really great alternative, and from my experience, high quality worm castings perform better than anything else. It's how the earth works, right, and how plants are normally fed. So,
can you guys talk a little bit about what the plant is at? We talked about the microbial population that you're adding into the living soil, which of course has benefits. Are the plants able to get any nutrients out of the worm castings as well to grow, or how does that work?
So the difference between composting with worms and composting thermophilically is, hopefully I got that right, but it's the breakdown of these food sources with microbes, and when you do that after it's been thermophilically broken down, you get a significant increase in soluble nutrients. And once the food has gone through the worm's stomach, and the bacteria and all the
Microorganisms.
they're breaking it down. That's when things are released for soluble intake by the plant. So
Yeah.
that's a huge chunk of why taking the time to break it down further with the worms. We're breaking down compost piles by a yard, thousands of pounds, almost 70-80% sometimes.
Wow.
And you can just imagine that amount of those nutrients just being broken down and then finally put into this.
Absolutely. And I, like you were saying, when you break it down thermophilically, I think in particular nitrogen gas is off, so your nitrogen levels are going to be lower. But even things, other nutrients, will become more available with worm castings. They get really well broken down, and we were talking about earlier, depending on a lot of times worm castings are worm castings, but depending on what they've been fed, it's going to be very different for the end product. So if you're feeding a high phosphorus input, I remember what was it like, different types of manures will drive different nutrient ratios, and ultimately worm castings should be looked at as fertilizer rather than just like blanket slate. Like you should think about what they've been fed, and not only the other upside to it, not only do they contain nutrients themselves, but because of the microbes, especially for a living worm casting like this, when you start mixing it with something like a granular fertilizer or even a salt-based fertilizer, the microbes in here will make it more available to the plants. So not only does it provide some nutrients, but it also improves the availability of the other nutrients you're putting in there.
Makes a lot of sense. So is there ever a stage of the plant growth, whether it's in a vegetative state or a bloom state, where you wouldn't want to add worm castings, or new soil you don't want to add it, only to re-amend soil? When can you use worm castings?
Before I knew how to grow, I remember one time I was really excited, and it was after worm casting, doing worms. I've been trying to produce worm castings for like I think 20 years now, and I'm not an art. It's an art and a science, and it's something that I've messed up a number of times. But I remember I didn't really know much about plants, and I tried. I took worm castings and plants. It's a conifer straight into it, and just killed it. I didn't know what I was doing. So you can definitely, it can be too rich. It definitely can hold a lot of moisture, and it can be really rich. So it depends on the plants. But I know some of the really experienced growers who do like 50% worm castings and 50% like cocoa perlite as their soils. So you can really push it, and depending on what else is going in there, I'd say the type of plant too. I'd say annuals, like fast growing annuals are going to be more, adept at like at high levels of worm castings. They're used to disrupted areas like swamp, like floodplains and whatnot. So there's going to be a lot of muck and whatnot. But
we recommend 5 to 20%, and I think it depends on not necessarily the stage of the plants that you're growing, but the stage of your soils. If you're just starting out a fresh bed, you might want to lean to 20%, and then if you're just top dressing, you've had a nice living soil bed for a year or two, you might just want to top dress and just add a little bit to the top, or do an extract. So it's really about just getting the biology in the soil, and you can do that with making an extract with a paint strainer bag or a mesh bag or
Yeah.
whatever, but it really comes down to the aggregate in your soil and how much you want, in that.
I used to, I still do actually, take worm castings and brew it with fertilizers. Some people do straight worm teas, which is great. I'll take it and I'll add a bunch of other stuff into it, and then feed that fertilizer in. So I think it breaks it down, and it not only improves the uptake and availability, but it also reduces the risk of burn from my experience. I think it puts it in a safer form for the plants when you have your fertilizers mixed with it. And for a top dress, I'll take a granular fertilizer, mix it with worm castings, and then dress on top. And I found like it just performs a lot better.
So you guys both brought up teas. When would you decide, okay, I'm just gonna take this product as it is, I'm gonna either mix it into my soil, or as you said, top dress it around the top, versus do the straining and getting the liquid off of it, making a tea, and then putting it in? How do you know when to do which one?
Well, it probably depends on the grower, right? Like if you're looking for a foliar spray, you're gonna need a tea.
Okay.
I mean, I suppose you could grow worm castings. Probably won't go well, but or if you're a cocoa grower, let's say, and
Yeah.
you're like kind of a hydro grower, you don't
You need things in
can't
liquid
top dress,
form.
so yeah, you basically can solubilize it and then feed it in. And a lot of salt growers, they think like worm castings aren't particularly for them, but to me, like if I were doing a salt-based grow, this would be very important, more so because I know this is a bunch of stuff that isn't otherwise available in my plants.
That's a really good point. Anything to add to when you like to use teas or extracts versus the actual product?
Whenever you have time.
And
It
it's
definitely is the
just
more the
doing it,
merrier, I
you know,
found.
it's-
Like,
yeah, because it's available to the plants faster. Is that correct when it's in a water tea form?
Yeah, and also especially for something that is this active, right? There's a bunch of microbes and other insects and whatnot that are going to be predatory towards potential pathogens. So the more often you're doing it, the healthier your ecosystem is going to be. The cool part about worm castings, is it's rich with all sorts of life, but the life in here, there might be a predatory bug in here that's eating other small insects or larvae or whatever, but there's no plants, so you don't have to worry about transferring pathogens, but you can get the pests. I mean the pest control, I'm sorry. You can get the predators, not the pests.
Right. So these buckets don't contain any actual worms, correct?
Yeah, there's worms there.
There are.
Cool.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, tell us about why I know that's very beneficial.
Well-
Tell us about why that's a good thing to have in the buckets, which also makes it unique from a bag of worm casting that you might buy from a garden store.
So I don't sift to the 1/8 inch or the 16th inch
Got
to
it.
give you just that one worm casting. The microbes are continually feeding on the bigger pieces of wood and just all the other nutrients in here, and it gives that, to me, gives a transport mechanism for wherever this is going. They're going to thrive longer wherever they're going to have what they're typically used to eating, and it just helps in our experience. When you're sifting at a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch, the worms are still going to be, most worms are in the first top 6 inches.
Yeah.
When all those babies hatch, like some of them just don't make it all the way up, and some of them are still happy just hanging out down below. And when you're harvesting, you're gonna find worms. It's a couple 100,000 worms in a bin.
Yeah.
They're gonna make it through, so it's not a bad thing. It's in my mind, it's
Yeah, it's a great thing actually. It's you'll find
Free worms with
free
your worm
worms, right?
castings. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. What type of worms do you use?
We started with a mix between the reds, Euros, and blues. The blues, I'm sure we still have some. A lot of them have found, they're really in the greenhouse still. They're just not in my bins. It's just over a couple storms and a bunch of years of doing it. So I find the Euros I think the reds kind of overtook the Euros, and,
Yep.
and, you know, we still
what always
find them, but
happens.
they're just not prolific.
For me.
And realistically, they're probably a little bit lower in the substrate. So the Reds are gonna be way up on top eating, and then the Euros are gonna come in and eat what they've left behind, or they've eaten, and they're still interested in, you know, pieces of
Yeah.
it. So they have a different appetite, and they have different bacteria and gut just biomes. So that's why I started with the 3, and, you know, you won't get more worms out of a mix between Reds and Euros. I believe that, you know, they will mate, but the eggs won't hatch. So I'm less concerned about, you know, breeding more worms, and more concerned about, you know, making the best worm castings we can, and having that diverse biome there is, in my mind, what makes it, you know, a better product than a lot of the straight runs.
Agreed.
It's just diversity.
Definitely, great. Cool. I love that I can see it. We should get some shots of this.
Yeah,
stuff.
why don't I do that?
It's great because I can see some biochar, which is amazing. I love using biochar. There's, you know, some minerals. There's, you know, some light chips, but I love the diversity in here. Look at that.
Look how rich.
We should look at this under a microscope.
I love that idea.
Yeah, we just did that at the NOFA conference.
Cool.
And
It's beautiful.
it was fun.
I love it.
A
There's
lot
a
of fun
little
guy.
sand in here too, which is nice.
Yeah, that was one of the places I was.
There's a worm.
One of the places we were getting our compost, incredibly diverse, unbelievable compost. But where they scrape it up from, they've had more and more sand over the years. But we also add basalt, black lime, and
Nice.
some other, you know, so some of that is just digested minerals as well, which
That's
is
awesome.
just a benefit. But I try to go light on that stuff because you know, it's, you want just a regular, you know, a normal.
Nice. Very cool.
All right.
It's here now for sale, and you can buy a bucket. And yeah, we're super excited to have these. We just purchased 10, and he does them fresh. So we're gonna, you know, replenish. You know, try to keep the inventory tight so that way it's fresh always. And yeah, I think you get to take this bucket home, and we're figuring out how to pause it, or, you know, when you get your second bucket, bring the bucket back. You know, get probably a few bucks off it. And let's see what else. Anything else we want to talk about?
No, just
Well, there.
trying to do it yourself. You know, we get a lot of people that, you know, just have those questions about, you know, starting their own bins, and even, you know, with their bins, and a lot of farmers, they just can't make enough to do everything that they need to do, but,
Yeah.
you know, you can always start somewhere, and, you know, we completely recommend doing a bokashi to start, because you can get rid of a lot more food waste than typical backyard composting. And it's sealed, pests aren't in it, it's just a great way to do that, and from our experience, makes just incredible worm castings. So you can reduce a lot more and do it with less issues and neighbors yelling at you and all that kind of stuff, but then keep you know, a worm bin in your basement, and, you know, family of 4 can, you know, one small tote can take care of everything. So
Wow.
you know, just
Can you
start
do
making
it in
home.
just a tote, or do you have to have like the level system? You just do a bucket like this?
I think everybody has different
Yeah.
different opinions, and everybody has different things that work. Those totes, a 3-tier tote system works great for some people. And you know, we're going to the wedge. We're in the living soil beds, and we're doing a wedge system now, and just find it that much easier, less compaction, less
Wow.
less headaches. But I think it doesn't matter how you do it. It's just starting it, and
Yeah.
going from there. And
When you said start with a bokashi, for those who don't know, what does that mean?
So you can ferment your foods, your plant waste, your flowers, anything organic. You can ferment it with a bokashi bran or a bokashi. It's just the term for those essential microbes that are anaerobic.
Mm-hmm.
Those will break down the cell walls and they'll drop the pH down below 4 on everything, as long as you have the mixture of bran and then a sealed lid, a couple weeks, and that whatever you put in there will be significantly ready to be broken down, and you turn that into worms, into a worm bed, and it's just incredible how quickly that can go. You got to watch out. It can, as soon as it meets oxygen, it can heat up. So you want to make sure that you do it in a slow way, so that you're not, dealing with, a lot of heat, which is, to your point with them, I feel like all that nitrogen's going up. Not so much with the bokashi. It's converting all within that bin. So
This is amazing, and it's something I want to personally learn more about. And fortunately, stay tuned. We are going to be doing a workshop here soon with Joe, and he's going to teach us these things, which I'm super excited about. So stay tuned, because we'll be announcing the workshop, the limited seats, and we'll be live streaming it though too, I think. Or yes,
That's the plan.
that's the plan. Yeah. So yeah.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks so much, Joe. We're super excited to be carrying Joe's worm castings here. Very, very proud of this, and so yeah, come on by and check them out.